Hi, friends. So we're deep in the COVID lockdown, and so I got the COVID hair going on. I haven't posted anything in a long time, but I've been busy. So finished up a rewrite on Lake of Dragons, the original, first, I guess not the original, the first book in the Lake of Dragons series. That was originally released in 2005, and there are a lot of things I don't like about it anymore, things I'd like to change, like the cover. I hate the cover. Um, Unfortunately, I can't make any changes because the publisher wants money and stuff, and I don't want to give them any money, so I'm going to re-release it under my own brand. And since I'm doing that, I figured I would fix some things that bother me about it, like the narrator. Well, the cover we covered already, but the narrator is a jerk. I don't like him anymore. I thought he was clever 15 years ago, and now he just bothers me, so I killed him. We got a new narrator now, and a new title that's more specific to the point of this first book. It is called To Kill the Dragon. Um, that is the focus of Milik's quest in this story. So I thought it might be fun to read this new story to you. Now, I haven't republished it yet with the new cover and the new title and the author Michael Mettille instead of that jerk Mike Reynolds. I don't like him either. So I'm going to be reading off my computer, but this is what we'll be publishing hopefully in the next month or so. We'll do a cover reveal and all that fun stuff. But for now, if you're interested, here is To Kill the Dragon, being the first part of Lake of Dragons by Michael Mettille, formerly released as Lake of Dragons by Mike Reynolds. Jerk. Anyways, moving on. So chapter 1, Childhood's End. Milik leaned against the mighty oak crowning Keller's Hill. The spot was a favorite of his, a place to ponder both days gone by and days yet to come. This particular occasion was similar to most. After a full day of rigorous training, his mind often had a tendency to chase concepts rather than relive memories or form new ideas. Of all the concepts he mulled over while leaning against the rough bark of the great oak, Mother earned the lion's share of his attention. Of course, he knew what the concept meant. He simply had no experience with one. His died shortly after he was born. All he had were stories, and they were vague at best. There was something about a young woman and a great power. None of it was anything tangible, nothing more than loose concepts and generic ideals. Hey there, lad. Imitat's voice shattered the quiet. Be time for your feeding. Milik waved his response, collected himself, and trumped on down the hill. Pink clouds caught his attention, painted by the sun setting behind him. He must have lost track of the hour. His stomach grumbled loudly as if to confirm the idea. He quickened his pace down the hill. Admiration swept through Milik as Imitat glanced back at him. His stern mentor looked like he had jumped right off of a painting. Milik had seen once. It was an image of valiant men standing tall against a horrible dragon. Imitat could easily stand among heroic men like that. He was massive, a half head taller than most and broad about the shoulders. The wind caught hold of his hair. It danced about the breeze, glinting like rusty gold in the failing light of the setting sun. He was every bit the hero in Milik's eyes. There wasn't a man who stood mightier. Then something about Imitat's expression changed. It was odd and unfamiliar. It resembled a smile in the way it parted his beard from his mustache and plumped his cheeks out, but it didn't quite fit, like a dwarf seated on a giant's throne. Normally, the sharp lines of his face looked like something that could cut stone. Accompanying the strange smile-like thing twisting up his beard was an uncustomary wave. The warrior almost looked happy. Milik grinned and quickened his pace all the more. He puzzled only briefly over Imitat's odd behavior as he worked to catch up to the man he had grown to know as father. There was a concept far more readily available to him. Imitat had always been very clear about the fact he and Milik shared no blood. However, as far as Milik could tell, his teacher, mentor, and trainer accepted him as son. And of course, Milik loved and admired Imitat as he imagined any lad would love and admire the one teaching him to be a man. Imitat wasn't one to fall victim to bouts of affection and show anything which might be construed as weakness. There were times, though, times when the rough and tough would crack just enough for Milik to catch a hint that Imitat cared for him. The odd smile combined with the awkward wave equaled one of those times. Those brief moments were enough for Milik. They had to be. Every day was the same for him. Rise with the sun, take in the morning feeding, run the pastures with Imitat, who seemed to get slower as Milik grew, and then bathe in Yester's pond. All those things were considered by Imatath to be the warm-up. After the warm-up came sword training. Sword training always seemed to last forever. By the time it was finished, he could barely lift his sword. He didn't mind too much, as he was but a lad of 12 summers and already close to being Imatath's equal. That fact made him feel powerful. Stories of his master's conquest spread as far as Mettille had ever been. After sword training was complete, it would be time for the midday feast, the nucleus of the day. Every other activity was planned around it, even the short nap that followed. Mettille's workday ended with his book lessons, when he learned about how the world came to be and how to make your way through the great journey of life, as Imatath called it. Once all his daily tasks were complete, Mettille was allowed a bit of time to himself before the evening feeding, which brings us back to where we began. The warmth of the fire seized Mettille immediately when he entered the hut. He shook the chill from the winds of the hill off himself and took his spot at the table. A large pardon me, get a drink here. A large sweet cake sat at the center of it, decorated as if it were meant for some sort of festival. Then he inhaled the sweet scent of roast tubberslat, his favorite. "Are we expecting guests, Father?" he asked, confused by the ado over the evening feeding. Normally it consisted of bread and sweet jelly, maybe a little stew, but never anything as extravagant as roast tubberslat. "No, lad, just us," Imatath responded with a grin and a slight giggle, as if he were enjoying a joke all by himself. "Why the feast?" Mettille continued, still a bit taken with the great meal placed before him. Imatath laughed out loud at his pupil. "Ah, my lad, you're still so simple. A bit of roast tubberslat and a sweet cake and you be having us at a feast. Weighs heavy on me heart, lad, but this day be a very important one to you. And on this night I be telling you why." Imatath's strange behavior kept Mettille off balance as he continued his line of questions. "What if this day be so special it makes it any different than any other?" "Today be a celebration, laddie," Imatath boomed as he swept Mettille up and embraced him. "Father, you be scaring me." He could barely get the words out. Imatath had never acted in such a way. Perhaps the grizzled old soldier has lost his mind. "What we be celebrating?" Imatath eased his grip and took a step back, still holding on to Mettille's shoulders. "Today be the end of your 12th year, lad." His voice trailed off and he looked as if he might cry. Instead, he continued with a bit more strength behind his words. "Today we be celebrating your success." Mettille's head was swimming. He had no idea what had happened to the man who had raised him, taught him, and trained him. The jovial fellow standing before him looked almost... "I be quite proud of you, lad," Imatath finished Mettille's thought. "This part of your journey be complete. Tomorrow you be starting off on a new adventure. On this day, I call you a man." Imatath's cheek moistened as a tear raced down it to mingle with the coarse hair of his beard. Mettille couldn't speak. This must be exactly how a father swelling with pride at his son's accomplishments would act. After the feast and some fun chatter Mettille was unaccustomed to, Imatath said, "Mettille, join me in a pint of ale." Ale? He couldn't believe his ears. Ale's what the men drink, not young lads. "Mettille, today you be a man. You've trained hard since you could lift a sword and read a book. You've finished the first part of your journey. Tonight we share a few pints. Tomorrow we forget the sun and sleep till our bodies be ready to wake." The two men drank and shared laughs about things they had done over the years. Mettille got to see a side of Imatath he never thought existed. Not that Imatath wasn't a caring father to him. Laughter and fun were just not part of the normal routine. Mettille thought it quite possibly the best night of his life. "Tell me more about me mother," Mettille said after finishing a laugh about a laugh he had some years back at Imatath's expense. The mighty Imatath had been showing him a sword technique used on horseback that required two hands and an agreeable horse. In this particular instance, the steed was not so agreeable and managed to lose his rider, Imatath, in quite an abrupt fashion. Mettille was unable to contain his laughter. The outburst earned him a harsh scolding and proper punishment for his disrespect. On this night, however, Imatath had a great booming belly laugh at the memory of the incident. "Ah, your mother," Imatath started with a sigh. "Truth be told, lad, I never did get to meet her. All I know of her are the stories, and those I can share with you now. They say she was of unrivaled beauty, hair golden like sunshine, eyes deep and brown, the likes of which can enchant a man and have him forgetting his name. They say she had pale, soft skin, and her voice was even softer. She'd be singing with songbirds in the morning as the sun peeked his head o'er the mountains. Anyone who ever heard the song said it was sweeter than any song a chorus of songbirds could sing." He paused and lost himself in a thought, staring into the fire. "So she was pretty," Mettille broke in, desperately wanting to know more. "Pretty? Did you hear what I said? Pretty wasn't the word. They say the word beauty was created only to describe this woman. Though the word itself came long before your mother, she was what that word be trying to describe." "What kind of person was she?" Mettille continued. "Aye, she was a kind, gentle lass. They say she never had a cross word for anyone. Type of lass who would listen to a little child's story as if it be the most important news she'd ever heard." Did she ever marry? What of my father? I mean you no disrespect, father, but you said we share no blood. What of me birth, father? He pressed on, prying for more. All of these questions he'd been carrying around and asking, but never getting straight answers. Finally, Imatath seemed ready to tell him all. Imatath's smile faded a bit. That question be a bit harder to answer. You see, son, Malik was taken a bit by surprise. Imatath had always treated him as a son, but he had never actually referred to him as such. The father and Imatath noticed the surprise on the young lad's face and continued. You've had a hard life. You wouldn't know it because it be all you know. For as long as you can remember, every day be training. Aside from a few adventures, all you've known be. He paused, searching for the right word. Preparation. It be true I have never called you son. I'd be greatly sorry for that. I've always thought of you as me own, though. He paused again. I know you be keeping me in your heart as any father does, Malik helped, prodding him to continue. That be true, son, I do. I thought if I didn't call you me son, this day might be easier. I tell you it ain't. What about your real father, though? That be your question. He shook his head a bit and made a weak attempt at putting the smile back upon his face. This may sound a bit confusing, but your mother never knew a man in that way. Malik's brow wrinkled up as he had digested the tidbit. He knew enough about life at this point to know how babies were formed and that a mother needs the assistance of a father to create one. How could that be? His words dripped with doubt. You see, son, it ain't me place to be giving you all the answers right now. That task belongs to another. All I can really tell you about your father, or lack of, is that you have a very important role to play in the shaping of our world, the very survival of our race. Your role is key. He stopped suddenly and looked up at the low ceiling of the hut. Did you hear that? I didn't hear a thing, Malik replied, and then, feeling a bit bold from the ale, added, I think you're dodging the question. No, lad, there'd be something on the roof. Imatath leapt to his feet. He cleared the small table sitting before the fireplace and snatched his sword from the mantel in one smooth motion. His eyes were slits as he cocked his head to one side and listened hard for the noise to repeat itself. Malik hadn't heard a thing, and thought perhaps Imatath was having at him with a prank of some sort. Though a prank wouldn't fit his usual cold demeanor, he was acting a bit odd being all full of the ale. A slight sneer crept onto Imatath's upper lip. The muscles of his face flexed as he set his jaw tight. The room was completely silent. Imatath stared at the ceiling and Malik stared at him. Malik jumped out of his chair. This time he heard the noise. A light scratching on the roof. There was something up there trying not to be heard. Grab your sword, boy. Time to test your training, Imatath growled through clenched teeth. Malik did as his master said without knowing what exactly he would be dealing with. He couldn't stop staring at Imatath, who seemed to be getting bigger with every tense breath. He wasn't, but as he stood like stone, ready to face the danger slithering around on the roof, the man looked like a giant. Right at that moment, Malik felt a great swell of pity for whatever poor creature was about to be slain. They both strained hard through the silence, waiting for the sound to repeat itself. There was nothing. Suddenly, the door of the small hut crashed in. Splinters filled the room with a large gray shape racing in behind them. Before Malik could raise his sword, the beast was on him. Mouth open, long, jagged teeth dripped saliva onto black lips. The thing slammed Malik to the floor, yanking his head back by the hair and exposing the soft flesh of his neck. He howled as if a chunk of him were already missing and slammed his fist down against the beast's head. Then he stretched his own head back, trying to get his throat as far away from its mouth and those nasty fangs as possible. Before his fist had another chance to strike, Imatath was on the beast. They crashed through the table and rolled across the floor. Imatath wound up on top. Without pause, he began pummeling the beast. The battle lasted only moments. Malik watched in awe as his master fought like a wild animal. He was an animal, snarling and grunting. He pounded the beast's face with his fists, his elbows, and his head. The thing didn't have a chance. After a few moments, Imatath snatched the back of its head with one hand and its chin with the other. With one quick twist, he snapped its neck. A loud groan poured from the thing's slobbery mouth as the beast twitched, trembled, and then stopped moving completely. Malik stood motionless, stunned. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed and had no idea what kind of creature the dead thing on the floor might be. His mind raced along without slowing, a series of questions for which he had no answer. As his mind fumbled along, trying to make sense of everything, the roof came crashing down with another of the beasts riding the eaves to the floor. Once it hit, it dipped into a deep crouch and then leapt up into the air. Quite instinctively, Malik slashed at it with his sword and relieved the thing of its head. In one smooth stroke, he deposited that gruesome head into the fireplace and dropped the pale, thin body to the floor in a heap. Malik gazed at the dying beast for the briefest of moments before leaping away to avoid having his boots saturated in the black ooze pumping out of the thing. Congratulations, son, Imatov started, slapping a hand on Milik's shoulder. You've seen your first real battle and survived. This place no longer be safe for us. We must go. Before Milik could add voice to any of the multitude of questions dancing around his mind, Imatov quickly started packing some essentials into horse sacks. Obviously, they'd be in the elements that evening. Milik stared first at the head burning in the fireplace, then at his blood-stained sword, and finally at Imatov. His young mind struggled to process everything he'd just seen, along with what he had just done. What were those? His whisper was barely audible. Those are a Matalazo, me boy, and they always be traveling packs of 10 or more. These two be scouts. They must have been too hungry to wait for their kin, Imatov replied in his normal matter-of-fact tone, as if they hadn't just almost been killed. What be a Matalazo? Milik asked. This time he had a better command of his voice. The Matalazo be parasites that live on the blood of men. They walk like men, but they ain't a mind for thinking. Their hunger be all they know. Make haste, lad. There will be more. Imatov continued to pack, leaving Milik to work at getting his wits back about him. Once all they could carry was packed and loaded on their horses, they mounted and rode north into the night. The moon offered ample light for travel. Milik expected they would make good time through the evening and stop for a nap when the sun rose. His theory proved false when Imatov abruptly halted their horses a mere 200 yards from their hut. The pack be near, Imatov whispered, eyes scanning the tree line. They have our scent, and would be given chase if we try to elude them. Tonight, we hunt. There be ample light. We should be filling our quarry quickly. The cool evening and all the action back at the hut had eliminated the fuzziness from Milik's head. Along with that, his years of training were serving him well. He was prepared to follow his master's lead and go on the attack. Imatov's sureness, along with his own instinctive dispatching of the creature in the hut, had his confidence soaring. On this night, his training and his mentor's confidence would finally be tested. Look there, lad, Imatov whispered, and pointed with his sword to a small group of trees about 100 yards to the east of their position. I see them, Milik whispered just as quietly, catching sight of two sets of yellow eyes staring at them from behind the brush. I'll be riding straight at them, Imatov began, again whispering. You'll be following a bit slower, catching any that might be trying to flee to the north or south. They move quick. We'd be no match on foot, but they can't outrun our horses. With that, Imatov slammed his heels into his horse's sides and started off in a mad gallop straight at the trees. Milik did as he had been instructed. He followed about 20 feet behind. None of the creatures tried to flee, however. Instead, roughly 20 nasty beasts, just like the ones they had faced in the hut, poured out of the trees like bees from a hive. They climbed over each other, racing to reach Imatov, whose sword was out and ready to spill their blood. Milik quickened his pace to help his master dispatch the wicked, mindless demons descending upon him. The three leading the charge attacked Imatov in unison. All of them leapt high, at least 15 feet in the air, and dove straight down on him. Imatov pulled out a dagger with his left hand and fired it at one of them, lancing its eye. It screeched like a horny witch. Almost simultaneously, he swung his sword with his right arm and slashed his other two immediate attackers in half. Milik started for his sword and opted for his bow. Another of the beasts was airborne and soaring toward Imatov. Milik fired an arrow. It sliced the air before piercing the thing's heart. He quickly killed two more in the same fashion. By that time, he was too close for his bow to be effective. He tossed it to the side and pulled out his sword. A few of the beasts took notice of his speedy approach and turned their attention to him. They sped toward him almost as quickly as he sped toward them. Once they were within striking distance, the first two leapt high in the air while three more circled around behind. His horse reared back, kicking one of them out of the air and losing his rider in the process. As Milik hit the ground, he saw the second airborne Amatalazo slash Gildra's throat with razor-sharp claws. He cried out as he scrambled to his feet and slashed the beast's belly open with his sword, spilling its insides out on the ground in a steamy lump. He growled at its falling corpse as he relieved it of its head before it hit the ground. A moment of mourning was all he had time to offer his fallen friend. A gift from Imatov, Gildra was the horse he had learned to ride on and cared for since he was a young lad. Before a tear could trickle down his cheek, rage filled him. Fire burned in his soul, and with an agonizing howl, he spun to face the three monsters that had managed to get behind him. Four menacing claws sailed past within inches of his face. He kicked the beast that slashed at him hard in the midsection. Then he brought his sword down on the back of its skull, cracking it open and exposing the wee scrap of a brain that lay inside. The other two went just as easy. Then he turned his attention to the rest of the pack attacking Imatov. Imatov was off his horse as well, but he had removed himself, jumping off to kick one of the beasts out of the air. Now he was battling with six of them amidst the bodies of those already fallen. Milik sprung into the center of the melee, and the two warriors quickly dispatched the rest of the foul horde. The battle ended as the last of the Amatalazo fell, impaled through the throat on Imatov's sword. It whimpered like a beaten scrod. Both warriors looked around at all the corpses and then at each other. Then Milek looked back at Gildra. He felt Imatot's heavy hand on his shoulder. Go ahead. This be the last time you can cry, lad. Milek wept for about half of an hour, while Imatot consoled him. He was in a big hurry to get the mess they made cleaned up and make camp, but he knew this was the end of Milek's childhood, a childhood which was anything but ordinary. The lad needed a chance to let out all his emotion. He let him cry until the tears were gone, and then the two men got started. In silence, they hauled the bodies into a pile and then set them ablaze. The stench of the burning carcasses was thick and foul. It saturated the air, almost dripped from it, a kind of odor that could choke a groan. It would, however, scare off any would-be attackers and allow the men to catch some rest. They had a long journey ahead of them, at least 2 weeks on horseback. It would be a bit longer now that they were down one horse. All right, so that's the end of chapter 1. Stay tuned. I'll be loading up additional chapters as I have time. You know, with the whole lockdown and everything, I've been so busy with, nothing to do. So I'll be loading chapters as I get to them. In the meantime, have a great day and happy reading.